that appeared in 2012 in Cambridge O-Level Chemistry focuses on the idea of balancing of chemical equation. Now, what is a chemical equation? In chemistry, a chemical equation represents what occurs in a reaction. We can write an equation by using chemical names in terms of their words or their chemical formula. Let's take for example the formation of this white solid. It is formed from a reaction between sodium and chlorine to form this chemical substance called sodium chloride, which is commonly known as table salt. So how do we represent this chemical reaction in terms of chemical equation? And this chemical equation has to be balanced. Now, chemical equation is balanced when there's equal number of atoms of each element in both sides of the equation. There are 4 steps in achieving a balanced chemical equation. Step 1, we write down the formula of the reactants and the products. Now, the reactants is written on the left of the equation, whereas the products are written on the right of the equation. Step 2, we will then check the number of atoms of each element on the left and the right of the chemical equation. If the chemical equation is not balanced, which is commonly the case, then we will need to move on to step 3. Step 3, we balance the chemical equation by placing number in the front of the formula of the substance in the equation. When the number of atoms of each element are balanced in the chemical equation, we can move on to the last step, which is step 4. Okay, we write down the state symbols of the substance. Now take note, state symbol, it is not required if you are not asked to write in the examinations. However, when we do practices, I will always advise my students to write down the state symbols to remind yourself at what state will different common substances exist as in different scenarios or not in different environments. Now, for easy reference, let me put the notes at the top of the screen, and we work on writing of chemical equation for this particular reaction at the bottom of the screen. Okay? So as mentioned, step 1, we are to write down the formula of the reactants and the products. The reactants are sodium and chlorine. Okay, so sodium, it is Na, chlorine is Cl2. Okay, reactants are written on the left of the equation, be it the word equation or the chemical equation. Then we will write the formula of the products at the right hand side of the equation. In a chemical equation, the arrow means the reaction produced or not the reaction forms products at the right hand side of the equation. Next, step 2, we are to check the number of atoms of each element on both sides of the equation. On the left hand side, we have 1 sodium. On the right hand side, we have 1 sodium. Okay, so for sodium, it is balanced on both sides. What about chlorine? On the left hand side, we have 2 chlorines. On the right hand side, we only have 1 chlorine because we did not write anything over here. If we didn't write anything over there at the bottom as a subscript, okay, then it means that there's only 1 chlorine. Now, on the left, we got 2. On the right, we have 1. So for chlorine, it is not balanced. So what do? We proceed to step 3. Now, step 3 states that we need to balance the equation by placing number in front of the formula of the chemical substance. Alright, so if left hand side has 2 chlorine, in order to balance number of chlorine, we will need to add a 2 in front of NaCl. We can't add a 2 just in front of chlorine at the product because now at the right hand side, chlorine is already bonded to sodium. They are bonded as one substance. So we need to add a 2 in front of the whole substance, which is 2 NaCl. If we add a 2 in front of NaCl, we will affect the number of sodium on the right hand side of the equation. So if that is the case, we'll need to balance the number of sodium on the left hand side. Okay, so we achieve that by adding a 2 in front of sodium on the left hand side. After adding the numbers, we should always be very meticulous, okay? Do double check whether the number of substances are balanced on the left and the right of the chemical equation. Okay, so let's double check together. For sodium, we have 2 Na on the left hand side. On the right hand side, we also have 2 Na. Okay, so for sodium, it is balanced. What about chlorine? On the left hand side, we got Cl2, which means that there are 2 Cl, 2 chlorine. Okay. On the right hand side, there's a 2 in front of NaCl. Okay, so this 2 belongs to Cl also. So which means that we also have 2 chlorine. Alright. So now there's equal number of sodium and chlorine atoms on both sides of the equation. So this chemical equation is balanced. So the last step, we are to write down the state symbols of the substances in the equation. Sodium is a metal, so this metal exists as solid. Chlorine is a gas, so we'll write as G. NaCl, the sodium chloride, it is a white solid, so we will write S to represent that sodium chloride exists as solid. So now this is the complete chemical equation for this chemical reaction. So back to the question that appeared in 2012. So it is given that 2 moles of X give 1 mole of oxygen and 2 moles of chlorine when X was heated. So now we are to work out what is the molecular formula of X. So we can work out the answer by writing the chemical equation for this reaction. So before we even write down the chemical equation, we gotta determine what is the chemical formula of oxygen and chlorine. Now oxygen, the chemical formula of oxygen gas is O2. The chemical formula of chlorine gas is Cl2. Now chlorine is in group 7 of the periodic table. All the elements in this particular group, they exist as diatomic molecules. So the chemical formula of fluorine will be F2, chlorine will be Cl2, okay? Bromine will be Br2, iodine will be I2. Fluorine and chlorine, they are both gases at room temperature and pressure. For bromine, it exists as liquid, alright? For iodine, it exists as solid. So we have 2 moles of X, it gives 1 mole of oxygen and 2 moles of chlorine. You realize that I don't write any value here, okay? Not writing anything simply represents that there's 1 mole of that particular substance. So how many oxygen and chlorine are there on the right hand side of the equation? We got 2 oxygen, we got 4 chlorine. Now it is given that there is 2 moles of X. So if 2 moles of X produces 2 oxygen, then 1 X will only have 1 oxygen. What about chlorine? If 2 moles of X produces 4 chlorine, then 1 mole of X should only produce 2 chlorines. So what do you think the answer is? In A, there is 1 chlorine, 2 oxygen. Okay, so this is not correct. In B, there are 2 chlorines and 1 oxygen. Okay, so this is the answer. For C, there is 2 Cl and 2 O, which is also not correct. D may be the next popular answer, even though it is incorrect. Some of the students who are slightly more careless, okay, they may miss out the info that there are 2 moles of X. If that's the case, they may write down the equation that I'm going to write in green over here. So they will take it as 1 mole of X gives 1 mole of oxygen and 2 moles of chlorine gas. If that's the case, then all my oxygen and all the chlorine will belong to that 1 mole of X. Then this 1 mole of X will definitely take on this molecular formula of Cl4O2. But obviously this is not going to be the correct answer because in the question it is given that there are 2 moles of X. Now if you find this video useful, remember to share with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. If you'd like to have more chemistry resources, do check out my website. The link is in the description below. Have fun learning chemistry and I will see you soon.